Because I think that is fairly obvious. That without knowing yourself, without knowing your own way of thinking, how can you think about anything else? Knowing why you think certain things, knowing the background of your conditioning, knowing why you have certain beliefs about art, about religion, about country, about your neighbor, about yourself. Without knowing your background, without knowing the substance of your thought, from where it comes, surely your search is utterly futile. Your action has no meaning, has it? Whether you're an American or a Hindu or whatever religion you belong to, it has no meaning. So before we can find out what is the end purpose of life, what it all means, these conflicts, these wars, this national antagonism, this whole mess, surely we must begin with ourselves, mustn't we? It sounds so simple, but it is extremely difficult. Because to follow oneself, to see how a thought operates, one has to be extraordinarily alert, so that as one begins to be aware more and more of the intricacies of one's own thinking and responses and feelings, one begins to have a greater awareness, not only of oneself, but of another in whose relationship you are. To know oneself is to study oneself in action, which is relationship. But the difficulty is that we are so impatient. We want to get on. We want to reach an end. And so we have not the time or the occasion or give ourselves the opportunity to study, to observe. Or we have committed ourselves so much to various activities earning a livelihood, rearing children, taken certain responsibilities with regard to organizations, committed ourselves in various ways, so that we have hardly any time for self-reflection, to observe, to study, to know. So really, the responsibility of any action depends on ourselves, not on another. And to pursue, as in America and all the world over they are doing, changing their gurus, their organizations, reading the latest books on psychology and so on, seems to me so utterly empty, so utterly futile. For you may wander all over the earth, but you have to come back to yourself. And as most of us are totally unaware of ourselves, it is extremely difficult to begin to see clearly the process of our thinking and feeling and acting. And during the weeks that are to follow, in which I am to talk, that is the thing I am going to deal with. Because the more you know yourself, the more clarity there is. Because self-knowledge is no end. You don't come to an achievement. You don't come to a conclusion. It's an endless river. And as one studies it, as one goes into it more and more and more, one finds peace. And only when the mind is tranquil, through self-knowledge, not through imposed self-discipline, only then, in that tranquility, in that silence, can reality come into being. It's only then that there can be bliss. There can be creative action. And it seems to me that without that understanding, without that experience, merely to read books about it, to attend talks, to do propaganda, at least seems to me so infantile. Just an activity without much meaning. But whereas, if one is able to understand oneself and thereby bring about that creative happiness, that experiencing of something that is not of the mind, then perhaps each one of us can bring about a transformation in the immediate relationship about us, that is the world in which we live. Do I have to be at any special level of consciousness to understand you? Do I have to be at any special level of consciousness to understand you? To understand anything, what is required? Not only what I'm saying, to understand anything. To understand yourself, to understand your husband, your wife, to understand a picture, to understand the scenery, the trees. What is required?